Crew, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Cassandra. Today I'm bringing you guys along for a full week in my kitchen during the height of preservation season. So let's go ahead and hop in. Heading into this week, it was going to be a very busy week for me because this coming weekend I had my sister-in-law's wedding. I was standing up in the wedding, so that meant that pretty much most of the day Friday and all day Saturday I was going to be busy with setting up the wedding and rehearsals and then the actual wedding on Saturday. So I had a lot of things that I really was focusing on getting done before Friday. So this is a Monday morning. I am chopping up some bell peppers. I had went over to my in-laws, my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law's house over the weekend prior to this Monday, and we did a little bit of trading. I had some broccoli that I brought them, some celery from the garden, a handful of other things that were good out of the garden, and they gave me a bunch of peppers. They also gave me some hot peppers, but right now all of my hot peppers are going in a bag in my freezer, and I'm just accumulating them for when I have enough to do a preservation project that I am looking forward to doing. So all I did was dice these up and put them in a Ziploc freezer bag that I labeled as diced peppers. I like to do them this way. That way they're easy to throw in quiche or fajitas, crock-pot meals, eggs in the morning, omelets, whatever it is. So this was the first preservation project really checked off of our list. Then my husband had also went with that same brother on a little bit of a day trip. They went trout fishing and grouse hunting. They did not come home with any grouse, but they did limit out on trout. So I had been brining the trout for about a day and a half, and I wanted to go ahead and get that smoked. So I loaded some cherry wood chips into the smoker here and let that start to heat up while I kind of finished on some other tasks that I wanted to get done while the smoker was heating up. I had a handful of really big rutabagas that had just gotten away from me. I don't remember planting them where we found these, so I wasn't looking for them, and then all of a sudden they were massive. So I don't know if these ended up being a volunteer thing, if an animal pulled away seeds into the part of the garden that I just wasn't paying attention, or if I dropped a seed packet or something. But either way, we harvested them. They're probably going to be a little woody, but nonetheless, we are going to use them. I just peel them. I'm going to dice all of these, and we are going to put them right into the freezer. I use these in rutabaga, or not in rutabagas. I use these rutabagas in pasties mostly, but I will also use them in sheet pan dinners or hashes. These that I had to do today, so I just peeled them all, and because they do still have some dirt on them after peeling, I do go back inside and we rinse these off. We are going to lay these out on a sheet tray, get these in the freezer, and flash freeze these like you have seen me do with so many other vegetables this year. And then once they're flash frozen, we'll come back and put these in 1 gallon sized freezer Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer for use throughout the winter. With rutabagas, you can kind of cure these and put these in a cold storage or a root cellar or something like that, but because I only had 3 of them, I didn't really want to have to worry about checking them all the time, so I decided to just preserve them this way. And did not blanch these. That might be a mistake, and I suppose we will just find out over the winter if skipping that blanching step was worth it or not, but we're just not going to know until I go to use these and figure out if I think the texture is off, if the flavor is off, or if I'm wishing that I would have blanched them. So that's just something we're going to have to wait and see for later. The other thing I had done is that Monday morning after I was chopping those peppers, my grandma got a hold of me and said, hey, all of my apples and pears are ready. Why don't you come on out and come pick them this afternoon? So that's exactly what I did. This was the next day. This was Tuesday. I went ahead and was just trying to get as much done as I possibly could, just trying to process these apples. This was a big goal of mine, to process as much of these apples as I could over the next 2 days, because I knew that coming up on this weekend, I was just not going to have time, and I did not want these to sit for an extended period of time and risk some of them going bad on me. So we were making a big roaster pan full of applesauce. Applesauce is very simple. All you have to do is peel them. I put them in my 22-quart roaster pan with a little bit of water, and we are going to cook them down. Any bad pieces I just put into a scrap bin. My chickens got them. They were fantastic, and they were super happy for that. I think apples cook down better in a crock pot versus this 22-quart roaster pan. However, because I was trying to get as much done as I possibly could in a short amount of time, I just broke out the roaster pan and did it that way. We are going to be working in batches over the next couple of days to process as many apples as we possibly can. Once I got all of our apples in the roaster pan, like I said, just a little bit of water, those are just going to cook down. All of the work for me that day was done. By this time, my rutabagas were done, so I went ahead and pulled those out of the freezer, and like I said, we're just throwing them into a Ziploc bag. I love projects like this because anybody can do them. There's no special equipment needed. I think a lot of people think of preserving food as always canning, and I personally rely a lot heavier on my freezers than canning. I think, well, our family prefers frozen vegetables over canned vegetables, so a lot of things like corn and green beans and carrots, things that you can pressure can, we really tend to just clean, peel if needed, blanch, and freeze in these gallon Ziploc bags. I do not use vacuum seal bags unless it's really big things of meat. Like, we will vacuum seal our salmon fillets, some of our really big trout fillets, but if they are just smaller brook trout, you'll see later in this video, we just use gallon Ziploc bags. I think that works well. We have stored things in our freezer for over a year in a gallon Ziploc bag, and it's been completely fine. We just try to keep our vegetables towards the top of the freezer. We use chest freezers. Your freezer is going to be coldest at the bottom. That's where the harshest freeze is going to be. And if you keep things up that you don't want to have as hard of a freeze on, like vegetables, to help them last longer, keep them towards the top of the freezer. And it can prevent them from getting freezer burnt and just help them last a little bit longer in the freezer. By this time, our trout was ready to be strung up. My husband had 3 trout this time. The other 2 were a lot bigger, and we decided to just throw those right in the freezer for oven roasting for a dinner for our family. We are a family of 6. We typically will roast 2 whole trout for a dinner for us. That gives us enough where everybody's really happy. It leaves a little bit of leftovers for my husband for work the next day, and it's really great. So we're just going to string up these trout. These brined, like I said, for a little over a day in water, brown sugar, and salt. You could also do molasses, you can do honey. Really, your brine is up to you. Just go ahead and hop on the good old Google and Google a really nice trout brine or a fish brine and find one that looks good to you. This is what we use. We've used it for the last couple of years, and we have really settled on this recipe. This last trout here, the head kind of got cut off on it when my husband was filleting it, so I'm not going to tie it to the rack here that hangs in the smoker. I'm just going to lay it over the top of the smoker rack and let it smoke that way. We are going to pop these in the smoker at a pretty low temperature, like 125. I wouldn't go over 135 personally, and we're just going to let these smoke for a couple hours. You'll know it's done when you can start peeling the skin away from the trout, and it's just really easy to peel back. It'll pull back like butter. It's absolutely delicious. I'm heading back inside. My apples are ready to be blended. I'm just going to take my immersion blender and blend up my cooked down apples. You can add in more water as you need. We prefer to keep our applesauce a little bit thicker. We just prefer it that way, a little bit chunky maybe. My neighbor down the road, he always trades me his canned goods. He has an orchard on his property, and when we were putting our orchard in, he let us come over and taste pretty much everything he had out on his property to figure out what we wanted to plant on ours. And he let us taste a bunch of his applesauce. He keeps his really thick, really chunky. We keep ours a little bit less chunky than that, but we do like a little bit of a bite in our applesauce, and that's totally okay. Our trout was done, so I pulled that out, and you can see here, this is how you know it's done, just pulling that skin back really nicely here. It pulls back super easy. You shouldn't have to pull on it too hard, and you'll get beautiful chunks of smoked trout. This is fantastic. We eat it just like this. You can also put it in a dip with some cream cheese and some Old Bay, and it's really great on top of crackers. We love it. It's a really great snack for us, and we will eat this or eat off of these fish for the next couple of days while they are in the fridge. They never last longer than a couple of days. If for whatever reason we knew these were about to go bad because no one was eating them, I will put them smoked in a Ziploc freezer bag and throw them in the freezer for later eating, and then that way they're already smoked. We're heading on to the next morning here, and I took my cold applesauce out of the fridge. I just put it like this in the roaster pan with the top on in the fridge overnight because I did not want to have to can applesauce late at night. So the next morning I got the kids ready for school, and before I even got them on the bus, I was loading in this applesauce here to get into the water bath canner so that this would be a project that I would just be done with and not have to worry about later in the day. Pints of applesauce for the pantry shelf, which is great. All of these jars sealed, which is awesome. That always makes me really happy. And then once I got these in the water bath canner and the kids on the bus, I started peeling more apples for apple butter. To make apple butter is the same way you have to make applesauce. And then you cook down your applesauce even further, add in a little bit of vinegar, some brown sugar, some cinnamon, and you get apple butter. Really delicious. So that's what we did this morning. I was trying to knock out as many things as I possibly could before my 1-year-old woke up, because that's when things get a little bit more tricky, is when she's awake. So if I could get this knocked out early, I was going to be very happy. And in fact, I did. I was able to pull out my just regular sized crock pot and fill that with apples. Applesauce I had left over after I put all of the applesauce into my jars, I just put into a Tupperware. I put it in the fridge. That way we could use these for lunch boxes for the week. I also have a couple of desserts I wanted to make, and I need applesauce for them. Maybe some donuts or something. So I just put it in the fridge and figured we would use them over the next couple of days, and it wasn't worth canning. after I got the apples peeled in the crock pot, it was probably 9 a.m. and all of a sudden my husband walked in the door and I went, "What are you doing here?" And that's when he told me that at the location he was welding at, they didn't finish hanging the pipe that he was supposed to be welding. So this was Thursday, they basically said, "Go home and don't come back until Monday because we're not gonna have any work for you today or Friday." So he was home and we decided, you know what, once we get our son on the bus for afternoon kindergarten, we should just load the baby up and let's go fishing. It's very rare that Joe and I ever have an opportunity to go with just one child. So we said, let's just go. So while we were waiting for the bus, my husband kind of packed the car, got the fishing gear ready, and I washed up all of the vegetables that I went out to the garden with the two little kids that day and harvested. We had lots of green beans, lots of broccoli, a few tomatoes, just whatever I ended up harvesting. I wanted to rinse off, get cleaned, and set to the side for it to dry. That way when we got back from fishing, my vegetables would be kind of dry and ready to be packaged and put in the fridge. This time of year, you have to check your broccoli super well because you get a lot of cabbage moths, little cabbage worms. They're just green little wormies. And when I find them, I just put them right into my scraps bucket. You can see one there. And my chickens get them. But this time of year, I think off of these couple of broccoli heads, I picked like 6 or 7 little worms off. So I tend to take my time here and try to make sure I'm getting absolutely everything. That way when the wedding was over, I was good to go and I could blanch these off, and it saved me a little bit of a step later on. At home from fishing, we were lucky enough to come home with some fish. My husband got some trout. I got a really nice roasting trout, which I was very excited about. It's the biggest trout I've personally ever caught. But trout have a lot of oils on them, a lot of slime. They secrete a lot of slime. It helps keep them healthy. The trout really need that. If that slime ever gets taken off while you're fishing, it can kill the fish. So they're really slimy. You gotta come home, and we like to rinse them right away, and we'll put them in Ziploc bags and put them in the freezer. So these are just more fish for the freezer heading into the winter ahead, which is great. We love trout. We have it probably 2 to maybe 3 times a month, either smoking it and eating it as a snack or roasting it and having it for dinner. So it felt really good to get a couple more meals in the freezer for the winter ahead, and it was just really exciting because I did catch my biggest trout I've ever caught. I'll show you guys here. I'm very excited about it, but look at how unbelievably stunning this fish is, and it tastes just phenomenal. So really great day overall. Got to spend some one-on-one time with Cleo, got to spend some one-on-one time with my husband doing something that we really like, and it was fruitful. It was time well spent because we ended up getting things for the freezer. So overall, it was a really stellar day. Then I woke up Friday morning, day of rehearsal, days of setting up. I knew it was going to be a really busy one. So right away in the morning, I put that cold apple butter out of the fridge and got it back into the crock pot to start warming up. I knew I needed brown sugar for this recipe, so I went downstairs out of my storage bin, got some sugar, grabbed my molasses, and started making brown sugar. If you are interested in my apple butter, I have the recipe right here for you guys. Very simple, very easy. I love this apple butter recipe. I would put in a hair less vinegar just because I think it can be a little overpowering. So I usually do like 3/4 a cup of vinegar, but it's a really great apple butter recipe. I love it, and I love this canning cookbook. While that was heating up, I took time to take the rings off of my applesauce from the day before, label them, and kind of pack them back into the box so that my husband could carry these downstairs to the storage shelf for me. apple butter was ready to be jarred up. So same thing here, I just loaded these in, wiped them off, rings and lids, and got these in the water bath canner, and that was the last thing I was able to do before I had to head out the door to meet the wedding party. So my husband finished canning these up for me. He pulled these out of the water bath canner and did all of that for me and finished them off so that I would not have to worry about it. Getting through these apples, and I had mentioned to him that I wanted to make a couple apple pies to put in the freezer to have for the upcoming holidays, or just whenever we decided we wanted an apple pie. I've never frozen full apple pies before. I've done apple crisp. So he and my oldest daughter made 2 apple pies, and when I came home there was an apple pie on the counter waiting for me, and he had an apple pie in the freezer, which is great. This was such a wonderful surprise. It was really nice that he did this, and he even thought to pull out the camera and film a little bit. So it was just really nice that I came home and had at least 2 pies less worth of apples that I had to process. It was just a really nice gesture. So the kids and him on Friday night sat down, they turned on a Halloween movie, and they whipped out 2 apple pies for us, and it was just a really great time. So this is a full week of preserving in the homestead kitchen, a little bit of blanching projects, a little bit of just chopping projects, a little bit of what we could call food prep projects maybe with these apple pies. These are just gonna be great for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or sometimes you just have an impromptu dinner or a game night, and you can just pull them out and they're gonna be ready to go. Just throw them in the oven, and that's gonna be really convenient for us. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to hang out with me. I hope wherever you are, you're having a fantastic day, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye.